Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Unlocking Venture Capital. I'm here with Nathaniel, co-founder of Lymbic AI. So, Nate, do you want to give us a quick overview about what it is that you're working on? What does your startup do, and what you're excited about?
Yeah, thanks, Sydney. Thank you for having me. Nathaniel or Nate Rose, working on Lymbic AI as the co-founder. And what we do is actually privacy-preserving biometric security that uses your brainwaves as an authentication factor.
Okay, awesome. So Nate has sent me his deck. So as you guys know the drill, we're going to go through his deck because as you know, when you send decks to any investors, when we pass it to each other, we talk to the investment committee or we find other co-investors on your behalf as a startup, you usually don't get to be there to defend it. So your deck has to be able to stand alone on its own. And I go through everything the way that I would normally for pre-due diligence. So everything that I send to any of my co-investing partners, I've always given them the things that I like, the things that I would question, the things that I would look further. Because the whole point is that what would I do in the first like 2 or 10 hours that's going to save me 200 hours of due diligence? So that's usually how we level things as investors, especially at the earlier stages. So I'm going to share screen now because I have his deck. Okay, awesome. So Limbic AI, privacy preserving biometrics based on brainwaves. Awesome. And we have all of these logos. I'm guessing these are partners based on how I can see it. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. So Nate, you're going to have a chance at the end to reply to all of my questions. I'm going to have a lot of questions, so don't worry. I've already asked you questions before. So you know I'm going to have a lot of questions. You're going to have a chance at
Really?
the end to reply to it. But right now, it's going to be like you're a fly on the wall as though you're in the investment committee room.
Sure.
So I would present to my LPs or whoever's on the investment committee. Weak and compromised credentials are causing a $40 billion annual loss in data breaches. Okay, so he has all of this proof. That's great. These are probably as part of your pre-due diligence. You would also look these up to make sure that they are real, but also do your own research, whether you're using data monitor kind of database or other kinds of news outlets or whatever it is that you use. Most of the time, we start with Google. And then we're going to try and find out, okay, how is it $40 billion? Because none of these individual ones say 40 billion, but maybe it's an addition, maybe it's accumulation. And that's something that we would look into more, of course, because it's a great market if it is 40 billion. All right. Next. Oh, I clicked way too far. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so traditional biometric security methods rely on observing features which are prone to spoofing. All right, great. So he's seeing that there are vulnerabilities in the cybersecurity market, and that's the problem that you're trying to solve. It's causing a big, not only security problem, but also monetary problem for probably all of the clients and users that are being affected. So these are the three main ones that are, I guess, the current situation. What we're using. So we're using facial recognition, fingerprint, and voice recognition. So we've all have either used these or seen these in movies or have a brief kind of understanding of them. So the facial recognition is using a scan of your face and features. Your fingerprinting is the true biometrics when you look them up. In terms of the voice recognition, that's actually something I have not used before, but I always think it's really cool, is for probably much more high security things that would cost a lot to implement, which is probably why everyday people like myself don't use them as much.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
They use it in banks in Australia.
oh, lucky them. All right, so well, one thing that I think is very cool is that for something that is very product and scientific heavy, I do like that there is a video so it can show me how something is used or show me, in this case, how a problem is made into a bigger kind of problem. Okay. So how I would see this is first, I really want to play with this technology if I can. I think that's really fun. And secondly, I do feel like it's coming into real life the way that this presentation is being done. So that's great. Hold on. And so the next one, fingerprinting can be captured and reproduced through high resolution cameras. So as an early stage investor, something that we don't see a lot of is a lot of detail into the problem. I do like there is good amount of detail into the problem, so then we have a good understanding of this. I actually have seen this trick in movies, not in real life, but I'm sure it does happen in real life, of course. So it's really great to kind of show, how the current situation may be a bit outdated. All right, so biometric signals can't be hacked. Okay, good, because that is one of the big problems that people are facing is that the more that you're using certain kinds of security, the more cyber security criminals are out there to try and get what you have. And that's kind of the whole big give or take. And so there are, certain kinds of investors that will only specialize in this, and they have all the technology vetting, all the scientific people on their team, and ways to be able to try and break the system and see if it's going to not only be, top of the line and foolproof, but be able to see it, would everyday hackers be able to actually get in or out. And so when you have those kinds of people on your investment team, that is a huge plus because that already shows other follow investors, like the family office that I work for example, that this has been vetted. This has been, A plus. This has been checked off by this kind of team and at this level. So that's kind of why I bring it up. So Lymbic AI decodes unique brain signals for generating a privacy preserving biometric. Okay, great. So don't tell me. Let me try and figure out what this means. So encryption feature engineering. All right, great. So one of the big things that I've come to understand about this industry is that security has to do with the fact that can something actually be encrypted or not? And if it's not, it's going to be easily stolen. And again, that causes other vulnerabilities. So machine learning digital signal pressing. All right, so this is great for someone who knows exactly what that is. All right, so in terms of machine learning, digital signal pressing. If I were to try and explain this to someone on my investment committee who may or may not have, the exact same kind of scientific background or a scientific background at all, I would go back to the entrepreneur and be like, can you actually make this into more layman terms or proof or provide me citations even, something that is clickable? That would be great. So, but I do understand that, this is how they're processing the brain waves and generating what they need for security and privacy reasons because it does show me that on the picture. So that's great. So I'm much more curious about this hardware now. I'm sure he's going to tell me. The print, there's the lock or unlock, there's the dude's brain. Okay, great. And then after a certain amount of time, we actually don't know the amount of time. I wish that that was on this slide. We will be able to see if it's going to lock or unlock based on their brainwaves and being like, this is the right person that we're allowing access to. So it seems like this user is having an easy enough time, which is really great. Okay, good. I would also, if you're going to show me the screen of the device twice, then kind of show me the next level. Show me like what the dashboard will look like. Show me what the admin is supposed to do with it. Because you're just showing me the same screen twice. It doesn't really tell me anything. But if you're going to use up space or seconds of a presentation, then I would say use it more effectively. Okay, so, oh, awesome. So many headsets. So, all right, so they're partners. They're partnering with all these different headphones, headbands, headsets, and eyewear. Great. So, brain computer interfaces, BCI. So, I cannot tell you how incredibly frustrating it is when people give us terms, they do not tell us what it means. So, thank you for actually telling us what this means. EEG. Okay, now we're back to this. It's an ecosystem. Why are you doing
Okay.
this to me? Why is this always happening? All
Yeah.
right. So let's go over this. Have I seen any of these before? Are these popular in the market? That would be one of the first things that I would always ask as somebody who is really into different kinds of tech that's coming out and reading about it and things like that. So why would I think about that? Because I want to see if there's any hardware malfunctions, any scandals, any data breaches, any of these things from any of the ones that I know. Okay, so let's use a poor example. something, a certain kind of cell phone catching on fire, for example. And it'd be like, okay, if that's the brand that he's using, I'm going to question that a little bit more. So I would also then, instead of having just images, I would like to know who they are. So please give me names of exactly who your partners are, right? Because not only do I want to know how you're working with your partners, I want to know things about your partners because what they're doing is really important. They're collecting very personal information from users. So I need to know that these partners, have top of the line technology, that they have never been breached before, how they are responding to different user needs and everything, and how they're developing and so on and so forth. So these are the kinds of things that I would be interested in. And some of the bigger ones like Google Glass, I think the Apple has a glass as well. These kinds of ones I would like to know in terms of how you are working with them. Do they have certain kinds of requirements that you were able to meet? And how did you meet them? Was it difficult? Those kinds of things. This tells me a lot about the entrepreneur's journey into getting all these different kinds of partners. And like I said, I would be motivated to look into those partners a little bit more. All right, so let's find out about the business. Okay, not yet. All right, how it works. All right, we're still on how it works. So you select a headset. Love it. That makes sense. Authenticate your print model. Okay, perfect. Using API. Yep. Okay, so I presume that they are actually building the API or have built it to a certain kind of extent in order to actually partner with them and be able to test it well. ID accuracy is 82% pre-processing. So now we're at the market 2024, 2030. Great. I actually really appreciate that you're able to find as much up-to-date information as possible. There are, of course, founders in especially kind of a new category kind of space that can only send associated information from years past. And I do understand why that is, but it is very difficult to judge your valuation at present value when you don't have information at present value. So cybersecurity TAM. All right. So your TAM is 250 billion. Your biometric TAM is 56 billion. Okay, great. Public sector. All right. So what this person has done is that obviously used logos and things like that instead of exact kind of broad information. My suggestion is that I would infer that it's because these are partners that are in the pipeline or already have signed a real paper partnership. Otherwise, this would be a very strange way to write your target market slide and only have like one Morgan Stanley instead of like all financial institutions. So I would assume that they've signed Morgan Stanley in some way. Okay, so public sector, B2G. Yes, makes sense. So US defense, that's great. UK, that's great. So there are certain kinds of incubators and accelerators in the United States that does a really great job of providing procurement. So actually giving you the pilot projects and these projects when you're in their incubator. For example, they also provide you sometimes funding and grants and things like that. So if this startup that I'm looking at has done that, then they would probably write that somewhere in the slides, could be at the end, to tell me that this is your low hanging fruit because you already have a project with them, you already have a contract in hand. The private sector, B2B. Okay, so security and financial institutions and distribution partners. So these are also two other security firms. You're telling me the revenue. Okay, you're telling me the revenue. All right. So my question to the entrepreneur would be like, why are you telling me that? Nate, you're going to tell me at the end. So 2030. Yeah, you can just write it down to be like, this is going to make it sound so obvious. All right, 502 billion cybersecurity TAM. Amazing. So it's growing at quite a rapid pace. You could actually just tell me the growth rate is fine too, year over year. So the year over year growth rate, I believe, was something like 15-ish% just overall cybersecurity TAM, which is a very healthy growth rate in terms of investable business. And then 127 billion from 56 billion. Okay, perfect. So tiered licensing model, love it. So that actually was exactly how I thought the revenue model was going to be as well, as some kind of tiering for licensing model, depending on the size of the organization, what kind of sector they're part of, and what kind of and the price point, of course. I do not expect this to be at a price point where this wouldn't come into play. I would expect this to absolutely come into play. So how they're getting the headset, we don't know. Maybe they already own it. But, or maybe they rent it, or maybe it's part of the licensing model. So here it goes train model, and then you're sending me an arrow backwards. License model, hardware, great. 110, 100, 100 plus. Okay, I understand that that's a tier. I just don't understand how much you're charging based on this, unless you are charging $1 and $10 and then $100 and $100 plus, which I would be like, who is not able to pay you $1 a month, Nate, in cybersecurity? Because that is how exactly I'm reading it. And I wish that as an investor, I have enough information to not have to go back to the entrepreneur and go straight to my investment committee or go straight to, the next level of the fundraising funnel, whether that is, talking to other co-investors, talking to other partners, doing the rest of my due diligence. But I don't even know how much this costs, except that it's $1, because that's literally what I see. For corporate, it's amazing. What a good deal. Okay, so you're not allowed to tell me how much it costs now. All right. So now our team. Nate, that's who we have here today. Great. So Nikolaus, great. Co-founder. That's his experience. Perfect. I assume all these are clickable. If not, this is very weird. Yes, these are all clickable. Perfect. So what this team has done, which is very clever, is be incredibly space efficient, except for the video that came up twice. That was not space efficient. But the rest of it, the fact that you can click on things to bring you to other information is really great. And also, not everybody does it really well. There's also, I've seen so many click here, and then it's just like an image and it doesn't click at all. So the fact that you can actually see more about their backgrounds is really great. And then it also helps with the fact that a lot of people just clutter this slide
Yeah.
so much because they have a strong advisory board. So they want to put everything on. One thing that I do really would like to see, and that's a personal preference, not everybody does it, is any kind of scientific awards. So because this is a very product and science niche based startup, you have to win at the science. You have to win at the product. You have to be product innovation of the year at TechCrunch. You got to be winning the Bill Gates or the Clinton Foundation awards, for the best technology that's ever out there. You got to win CES. You got to do all of these things. So any of these things that are for this product, even if it's done by one person, or this person worked on the IP part, or whatever thing that is really really specific and actually relevant to this product, please put that on as something that we can understand, and is also something that shows us why you are going to be very very different than the other products that could be coming your way in terms of emerging into this space. So whenever you are doing well at something, or whatever you have a little bit of stardust on you, there will be people who are going to try and get in, right? In some way or another. So show us how competitive you are right off the bat, if possible. So one thing I do like that your advisory board has someone from security, someone from medical, someone from cognitive neuroscience, which is great. And so yeah, if you are going into other verticals and other applications, which is also something I believe this kind of technology can do, having a more broad advisory board would also be extremely useful. So for example, if you have someone on your advisory board in healthcare, and that is down the line one of the things that you're going to be doing, then that tells me that you are already thinking about it in a very strong way, and B, you already have contacts in that space that is really difficult to get into. So a lot more conservative types of investors have a sense of fear when it comes to, is this industry really hard to get into? Are they from this industry at all? And so right now, I don't know if these founders are from the industry, yes or no, and if they already have contacts or channels or things like that in terms of go to market that can help them with that low hanging fruit, which is exactly why I brought in the example of American incubators and accelerators that sometimes provide that extra boost. And even if you can't finish the contract, which we're not expecting you to finish the contract, if you have an LOI, that is miles ahead of anybody who doesn't. Okay, so pre-seed. Okay, good. So I actually know how much they're raising. Good. About 50% of the decks that I read from pre-seed startups don't tell me how much they're raising. So I just get to guess, again, go back to the entrepreneur. and
Yeah.
ask for more information, and that just makes it difficult. So please always tell it. And I like that this is a use of funds chart. So not only do we all love charts, but a use of fund chart is really great because it tells me a breakdown of quarters. So it doesn't tell me something that's too far ahead or, too close together that's going to be micromanaged in any way. It tells me just enough that it makes sense because it will probably take you like a couple of months to hire the heads of each of these different kinds of departments. And that's what you're using the use of funds for. So that makes a lot of sense. And as you guys probably know, investments always come in tranches, right? So
Yeah.
how you're using your fund will give us an indication, and by us, I really mean the lead investor, an indication of what to milestone your tranches in. And so the more clear idea you have, the better it is and the quicker it is to be able to start with the first tranche. So you don't really want that to be delayed. It's not even just getting the funding that's the hard part, it's all of the things until you are for sure getting all of your tranches, all of your milestones, all of everything in place. That is kind of like continuous process. So the easiest thing to do for yourself is to make the investor's job just as easy. All right, so beta neuroprint. New, I, I feel like this is a typo. Launch EEG ML. I'm guessing this is machine learning model patent. Yes, good. NIST security certification. Perfect. Okay, so that makes sense. So you do want to be certified. You want to have patents. You want to have all of these things in place. FIDO accreditation. Great. Neuroscience R&D compatibility. Okay, perfect. So the only thing that it like kind of doesn't tell me is how this is related to the top part of the slide. So no, I was looking for some kind of color signal that tells
Yeah.
me this is pointed to here. And then the bottom right hand corner. Okay, so AWS. So okay, great. So they went to these startup schools. All right. So just so everyone knows, startup school by Y Combinator is not the same as going through Y Combinator. All right. So just you decide on if you want to keep that or not. And Imperial Enterprise Lab, partner with the Microsoft for startups. Okay. So as someone who has worked as a CMO and COO for other startups before and was a founder, like some of these are not exactly incubators and accelerators. And I know that for a fact you didn't exactly get funding from it. So I do see what the entrepreneur is trying to say is, okay, these were the things that we've done. Yes, but on this slide, if you're talking about use of funds and what fundraising you're looking for, I'm expecting you to tell me what grants and what other angels and what other funding you have received, as opposed to what startup schools you have done in terms of courses, right? So some of these, for example, the Microsoft for Startups, they give you like credits for things, but they don't particularly actually fund you through Microsoft Ventures per se. And then same with AWS, they give you support and credits and in-kind kinds of gifts, but it is a little bit different than if they actually gave you like fundraising for a particular project because you actually pitch, because they don't know what your pitch is. And so if you do have angels or those kinds of things, those kinds of people things on here, then that would make it a lot more comprehensive in terms of what I'm supposed to be seeing. And if we can click on who they are, that would also be great. Okay, so, okay, great. I feel like I've seen this screen a lot now. This exact screen is like the third or fourth time.
Yeah.
I don't know why we're doing that. Okay, all right, cool. QR code to connect more and learn more. That's great. So usually people put like an email or this is a QR code, which is also very fancy. So I love that. Okay, perfect. So Nate, we have a couple of more minutes. How do you find this and what would you like to address first? You have the floor.
Definitely super valuable. Thanks, Sydney. The market, I think with the tiered licensing model, it's a little bit iffy or difficult to kind of ballpark like the pricing around that, just due to the pre-seed stage and also the novelty of like the service that we're providing, right? Which is biometric ID authentication, right? Typically, if you look at fingerprinting or facial recognition, that's just connected to the device that you're using,
Yeah,
right? IP and the patent is already built into it. So for new licensing tiering,
you don't know.
the compare it to is a little bit difficult, right?
So I understand that when you have a new category, it is
Yeah.
very difficult to do your pricing because you don't know how much to charge. But at the same time, what I want as a pre-seed investor
Yeah.
isn't that you had all the answers, is that you need to show me how you're getting the answers. Okay. So if you're showing me that you are doing a pilot project, whether it's paid or not, but that shows a need enough for someone to pay for it, that's what's important. Does that make
Correct.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want you to show me, okay, because like proving demand doesn't cost you anything except your time and your hustle. That's true of all startups. Okay. So you have to be able to show me that there is enough of a demand out there that good enough isn't good enough anymore.
Mm.
Because if it's too high of a price, then they're going to stick with good enough is good enough.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to take the risk. Good enough is fine. But if there is a huge, huge, huge demand, who is hurting the most, Nate? You have to tell me who of your target market is hurting the most, who can do it now, who has the funds, and what does that look like, right? So that's kind of why your pricing model isn't is expected, even in the future to change, and that's totally fine. Your investors will help you work on that, but you need to be able to show me how you're finding out that there is enough of a demand that there should be a pricing model at all.
Awesome. Yeah, brilliant. The one follow-up question, and I guess this is my last question, which is the for the price for the round that we're raising, should we just decouple what the implementation because we placed the certification, the licensing that we're looking to target, and you said that should be a little bit more parsed out. Should that just be two separate slides, or is it good that we condensed it into one? Is it too much information
I
all in
honestly
one?
don't know why you put the certification in here, and I was trying to read through it. So, do you need the money for the certification? Yes or no?
The certificate we need the what that's what we're looking to develop, right? So we want to get that 82% to
Yeah.
parity. We're at
So
95%. So
you're talking about a timeline versus a use of funds slides. Those are two different slides. Okay.
right, right. There's two separate sides then.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense.
Okay. Perfect. So you spent a lot of time in terms of convincing me that there's a problem. Okay. You could have that's half of your entire deck. All right. But you need to tell me that the market believes you have a problem and
Mhm.
then make that half of your deck. I don't mean the other half. I just mean that the rest of your types of slides has to match how deep you went into the problem
Mhm.
because it feels very imbalanced. You don't need to have this, like, I know that it's a problem when you give me enough stats, but you need to tell me that you've done enough work with your customers that you guys are like this. They're telling you that there is enough of a problem and that they're giving you, okay, well, these are the kinds of pilot projects we would be interested to do. These are the kinds of letters of intent that we would be willing to sign. Just anything that is from the market itself.
Awesome.
Okay. All right, guys. So thank you, Nate, for taking your time to come on this podcast, and
Yeah.
thank you for coming in to tune into another episode of Unlocking Venture Capital. Have a good one, guys.
Thanks.